It was a bright afternoon in the grand hall of a luxury mansion, where the staff moved nervously between gleaming marble floors and towering chandeliers. Every smile, every step, was measured. Why? Because the millionaire who owned this palace was not just rich, he was infamous for his arrogance and cruelty. Employees whispered his name in fear, calling him the boss from hell. And for good reason. From the moment he arrived, it was clear the millionaire enjoyed asserting his power. A dropped tray, a delayed report, or even the slightest hesitation could earn a scolding so sharp it left the victim trembling for hours. Today, as usual, he was in top form. "Where's my tea? I asked 10 minutes ago," he barked, slamming his hand on a gold-trimmed table. The young assistant froze, clutching the silver tray as if it were a shield. "Do you even know how to do your job, or are you just here to look pretty?" The staff exchanged worried glances, silently urging each other to keep their heads down. No one dared speak back. No one dared move too quickly or too slowly. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a kind of fear that made every heartbeat sound louder than it should. And then, a new presence entered the room. The tall figure, clad in casual rock star attire, strode in with an easy confidence that contrasted sharply with the rigid posture of the staff. It was none other than Ozzy Osbourne, the legendary Prince of Darkness himself. The employees dared a few glances, whispering under their breath, "Please, don't get involved. Don't even look at him." Ozzy, however, didn't flinch at the millionaire's booming voice or piercing glares. He moved slowly, calmly, almost observing as if he were watching a storm form. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the fear etched on the faces of the employees and the smug arrogance radiating from the millionaire. The millionaire, noticing the new arrival, smirked. "Well, if it isn't some washed-up rock star," he sneered. "Here to watch how a real boss runs things." Everyone froze. A silence heavier than the chandeliers hung in the room. For a moment it seemed the millionaire had complete control, until Ozzy's lips curled into a calm, knowing smile. And then, the tension shifted ever so slightly, hinting that the next moment could change everything. Hook for audience. What happens next shocked everyone in the room, even the employees who thought they'd seen it all. The room was thick with tension. Every employee moved cautiously, pretending to be busy, stealing nervous glances at the millionaire as he prowled around like a storm cloud ready to burst. His voice rang out sharply across the polished floors. "Why is this so late?" he barked at a young assistant who had dropped a stack of papers. "Do you even know how to do your job? Or are you just here to waste my time?" The assistant swallowed hard, mumbling apologies that barely came out before the millionaire waved him off with a flick of his hand, his jeweled rings glinting under the chandelier. Other employees averted their eyes, afraid that the slightest wrong move might make them next. Then, without warning, a tray of delicate pastries tipped slightly as an employee's hands shook nervously. The millionaire sneered. "Honestly, this place is a circus. Do I have to do everything myself?" The staff exchanged fearful whispers. "Please, let him calm down. Just keep your head down. Maybe Ozzy Osbourne shouldn't have come here." A hush fell over the room as Ozzy Osbourne entered, his signature shades hiding the storm brewing behind his eyes. Casual, yet confident, he moved past the terrified employees and caught sight of the millionaire tossing insults like daggers. Ozzy stopped. He didn't speak immediately, just observed. The millionaire, thinking everyone was intimidated, turned to Ozzy with a mocking grin. "And who are you supposed to be? Another clown to fawn over me?" The employees stiffened. Even Ozzy's reputation didn't seem enough to intimidate this man, or at least, that's what the millionaire thought. A few phones subtly slid into pockets and purses, cameras ready to catch every word, every gesture. The millionaire continued, oblivious to the silent judgment forming in the room. "I don't have time for amateurs. If you can't handle simple tasks, maybe you don't deserve your paycheck. I could hire 10 replacements tomorrow and not lose a second of sleep." A young intern dared a nervous glance at Ozzy, the icon of rock. The Prince of Darkness just nodded slightly, acknowledging the injustice but remaining still. His calm presence was almost magnetic. The tension in the room seemed to shift subtly. Employees began to feel a flicker of hope. Ozzy finally spoke, his voice low but cutting. "Maybe try respecting the people around you first." The millionaire laughed, arrogantly waving him off. "Respect? I built this empire. Who are you to lecture me?" But the room had noticed something change. Employees began murmuring quietly, emboldened by Ozzy's composure. Some whispered to one another, "Did you hear that? Even Ozzy's calling him out. He's not scared. Maybe we shouldn't be either." The tension was unbearable. Every insult, every harsh word from the millionaire landed heavier now, weighed against Ozzy's calm defiance. Employees glanced at each other, secretly recording the unfolding drama on their phones, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Engagement? Break. Have you ever seen someone finally stand up to a bully? Comment below where you're watching from. Are you watching from the USA, UK, or somewhere else in the world? The stage was set. The millionaire's arrogance had peaked. Employees were quietly rallying behind the silent hero, and Ozzy Osbourne was preparing to make a move that no one would ever forget. The room was tense. Every employee seemed frozen in place, like characters in a scene where the villain had complete control. At the center stood the millionaire, impeccably dressed, yet radiating a kind of arrogance that made the air itself feel heavier. He tapped his designer shoes impatiently on the polished floor, sneering at anyone who dared look in his direction. "Really?" he barked, pointing at a young intern who had accidentally spilled a few papers. "Is this how you do your job? Do you ever pay attention?" The intern stammered, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." The millionaire laughed, a cold high-pitched sound that seemed to echo through the spacious room. Sorry. That's all you have. Do you know how much money is wasted when people like you make mistakes?" Employees glanced at each other, shifting uncomfortably. No one dared speak. Every muscle in the room seemed tense, ready to flee at the slightest hint of anger. Some whispered quietly among themselves, trying to console one another. "Just stay calm. Don't get noticed. Don't make him angrier." Meanwhile, Ozzy Osbourne, who had just walked into the room moments ago, paused near the doorway. He noticed the trembling hands of the staff, the way the air had grown tight with fear. He saw the millionaire strut across the room, tossing a glass of sparkling water onto a nearby table and glaring at a staffer who was simply trying to refill it. "Honestly, you lot are pathetic," the millionaire sneered. "How do you even survive out there? I can't believe anyone would trust you to handle something important. And you," he said, pointing directly at one of the managers, "why are you still standing there looking useless? Do something, or get out of my sight." The manager swallowed hard, nodding quickly. But the humiliation was already searing. The millionaire paced around the room like a lion circling its prey, each step deliberate, loud, designed to intimidate. He laughed at every mistake, every minor imperfection in the staff's actions, and the employees felt smaller with every word. A waiter carrying a tray of appetizers approached too slowly, and the millionaire didn't miss a beat. "Do you even know how to walk?" he snapped. The tray wobbled slightly in shock, and a few hors d'oeuvres tumbled to the floor. Gasps echoed softly through the room. The millionaire's arrogance wasn't just verbal, it was physical. He leaned over desks, invaded personal space, and made it clear that anyone who didn't cower was next. Even seasoned employees, who had dealt with difficult clients and bosses before, looked around helplessly, unsure if anyone could stand up to this man. Ozzy observed silently, his eyes narrowing. The fear in the room was palpable. The millionaire was on a roll, feeding off the nervous energy, enjoying the power. It was clear to Ozzy that no one had dared challenge him yet, and the more the millionaire laughed, the more oppressive his presence became. Finally, he slammed his hand on the table, sending a few papers fluttering to the floor. "Enough," he shouted, his voice booming. "I didn't come here to babysit amateurs. Either step up, or get out of my way." The employees flinched. One young assistant muttered under her breath, "I can't take this anymore." Ozzy Osbourne, who had so far been silent, straightened. He looked at the billionaire, and in that moment, it became clear. The arrogant act had reached its peak. The millionaire had pushed everyone to the edge, and in the quiet tension of the room, every staff member, and even the millionaire himself, could feel that something was about to happen, something no one had expected. The room held its collective breath. This was the moment before the storm. The room was thick with tension. The millionaire lounged arrogantly on his velvet armchair, waving a hand dismissively at a trembling intern who had accidentally spilled a glass of champagne. Employees flinched, ducked behind counters, or muttered apologies under their breath, but nobody dared speak up. Fear had paralyzed everyone except one man quietly observing the scene from the doorway. Ozzy Osbourne had arrived just minutes ago, his signature round sunglasses reflecting the glittering shit. He leaned casually against the doorframe, hands tucked into his pockets, taking in the chaotic scene. At first, he said nothing. He simply watched. His eyes, however, missed nothing. He noticed the way the employees' shoulders slumped when the millionaire barked orders, how they flinched at every sharp tone, every sneer. He noticed the cashier, clutching a tray of desserts, almost trembling, and the young assistant who had been berated for moving too slowly. And then he noticed the millionaire himself, loud, boastful, and dripping with entitlement. The man seemed untouchable in his own arrogance. He tossed a gold-plated pen onto the table with a flourish, muttering, "Some of you couldn't even organize a tea party without screwing it up." He laughed harshly. Glancing around to make sure everyone was intimidated, Ozzy's expression didn't change, at least, not outwardly. But inside, a storm was brewing. He could feel the collective fear in the room, the stifled frustration of the employees, the tension that was about to snap. He knew the man had no respect for others, and Ozzy had seen arrogance like this before. He slowly stepped further into the room, letting his presence be felt without saying a word. A hush fell among the staff as they whispered to each other. "Is that really Ozzy? Please don't get involved. Just let him go." Ozzy's gaze shifted from one employee to another. He saw the hope, barely restrained, in their eyes, the silent plea for someone to stand up. And he realized he was that someone. The millionaire, still laughing, glanced at Ozzy dismissively. "And you are," he sneered. "Someone who doesn't like bullies." Ozzy replied softly, his tone calm but carrying an unmistakable weight. The room seemed to tense even further. Employees held their breath. The millionaire laughed at first, but the laugh faltered as Ozzy's steady stare never wavered. For the first time, the arrogance in the room faced a challenge not with violence, not with shouting, but with quiet authority. Ozzy's calm demeanor was like a magnet, pulling attention and respect toward him. The employees watched in awe, realizing that the unthinkable might actually happen. Someone might finally stand up to the millionaire. Ozzy took another step forward. He didn't rush. He didn't threaten. He simply positioned himself in the room where everyone could see him, including the millionaire. His posture radiated confidence, but also patience. Every inch of him communicated, "I see what's happening here. I know what you're doing. And it ends soon." Whispers rippled through the employees. Is he going to do something? Please don't escalate it. But Ozzy wasn't about to escalate. He was about to recalibrate the power dynamic, quietly, deliberately, and in a way that would shock everyone in the room. The millionaire, still unaware of the storm quietly brewing, waved a dismissive hand at Ozzy. "You think you're some kind of hero? Sit down, old man, and watch how things are done." Ozzy's lips twitched, almost a smile, almost a smirk. "Oh, I'm not watching. I'm waiting," he said softly, his voice carrying across the room like a calm before the storm. And in that moment, every employee felt a shift. For the first time in months or maybe years, they realized that the arrogant millionaire was no longer untouchable. The tension in the room didn't drop, it tightened, ready to snap. Everyone knew something monumental was about to happen, something that would be talked about for years to come. And all Ozzy had done so far was notice that the room had grown unbearably tense. Every eye was glued to the scene unfolding in front of them. The millionaire, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed power and arrogance, leaned back in his chair, smirking. He had spent the last hour belittling employees, mocking mistakes, and flaunting his wealth like armor. Staff members shifted nervously, glancing at one another, silently praying someone would intervene. But no one dared. Ozzy Osbourne had been quiet up until now. Standing near the corner, holding a cup of tea, he observed every insult, every snide remark, every cruel laugh. His black sunglasses reflected the flashing crystal chandeliers above, hiding the storm brewing in his eyes. The millionaire, noticing the rock legend standing quietly, smirked again. "Ah, Ozzy Osbourne," he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "I didn't realize we'd have royalty in our presence. Tell me, what brings you here? To see how ordinary people bend to power." A hush fell. Employees exchanged nervous glances. Some almost spilled their drinks, fearing a confrontation they couldn't control. Ozzy tilted his head slowly, his expression calm, almost casual, but his voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Ordinary, you think fear makes you powerful? You think insults make you respected?" His tone was calm, almost playful, but it carried a weight no one could ignore. The millionaire's smirk faltered slightly. "I'm just teaching them a lesson," he said defensively, trying to regain control. Ozzy stepped forward, slow and deliberate, each step measured. "No," he said softly, yet every word struck like a hammer. "You're showing them how not to treat people. You're showing them how small you feel inside, that you need to crush others to feel big." The staff in the room held their breath. The millionaire laughed nervously, brushing it off. "Oh, please. You're just a washed-up rocker. Don't lecture me on life lessons." Ozzy's head tilted slightly, and for the first time, a small, knowing grin appeared on his face. "Washed up, maybe, but at least I don't need to make people fear me to feel alive." The crowd leaned in. The air was electric. Every insult the millionaire had thrown now seemed empty, hollow. Even his closest associates shifted uncomfortably, realizing the power balance had begun to tilt. The millionaire, growing impatient, slammed his hand on the table. "Listen, you," Ozzy cut him off with a single, deliberate word. "Enough." The room went silent. All that could be heard was the soft clinking of cutlery and the shallow breaths of employees who had been holding themselves hostage in fear. Ozzy moved slightly, almost casually, toward the buffet table. His eyes never left the millionaire. The man, sensing that something was about to happen, straightened in his seat, chest puffed, trying to maintain dominance. "See," Ozzy continued, voice low but deadly serious. "Power isn't in what you say. Power isn't in fear. Real power is in respect. Something you clearly don't understand." He picked up a porcelain plate, not in anger, but with a calm authority. The room watched, frozen. Staff had their phones out now, recording every second. The millionaire laughed nervously again, clearly not expecting action. "Oh, come on. What are you, Ozzy?" Didn't finish the sentence. With a slow, precise motion, he tossed the plate toward the table, not to hit anyone, not to injure, but to make a statement. The plate slammed onto the surface inches from the millionaire, startling him, making a loud crash. Forks clattered. A napkin flew into the air. The room exploded in shocked gasps. For the first time, the millionaire was speechless. His arrogance, his carefully cultivated aura of invincibility, had been shattered in an instant. The staff exchanged relieved glances, some cheering silently, others recording the moment that would surely go viral. Ozzy didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He simply looked at the stunned millionaire and said calmly, "Treat people with respect. It's that simple." And then, just as quietly as he had arrived, he stepped back. The weight of his presence lingered. The staff finally exhaled. The millionaire sat frozen, humiliated, realizing that his reign of fear had ended, and the world had just watched it happen. The room was tense. Every employee froze mid-motion, afraid to breathe too loudly. The millionaire lounged arrogantly at the head of the table, smirking as he berated a nervous assistant over a trivial mistake. "Do you call this service? I've seen toddlers do better," he sneered, tossing a hand toward the spilled drink. The staff flinched. Some tried to calm him, whispering apologies, but he waved them away with disdain. Cameras on phones were raised discreetly. Everyone knew this moment might be historic, but no one dared to intervene. Ozzy Osbourne, standing a few feet away, had been observing silently. His signature sunglasses reflected the opulence of the room, but behind his calm exterior, a storm was brewing. He had seen arrogance and cruelty before, but the millionaire's behavior was relentless and utterly unnecessary. The final insult came suddenly. The millionaire laughed cruelly, pointing at a young intern. "You call that a proper setup? Pathetic. If I ran this company like this, I'd fire all of you in a heartbeat." A hush fell. The intern lowered her head, nearly in tears. Even the boldest employees couldn't meet the millionaire's gaze. And then, something shifted. Ozzy slowly reached out and picked up a plate, a simple white dinner plate from the table. His movements were deliberate, almost theatrical. He didn't yell, he didn't shout, he didn't even hurry. He walked toward the millionaire, every step measured. The room collectively held its breath. "You really think this is funny?" Ozzy's voice was calm, low, and dangerously composed. The millionaire blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me, who are you two?" Before he could finish, Ozzy flung the plate across the table. It didn't hit him directly, it smashed against the wall just behind, sending a cascade of harmless shards across the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The room went silent. Everyone stared. The millionaire's mouth hung open. His power, his arrogance, evaporated in an instant. A few employees whispered in disbelief. Did he just throw a plate at him? Ozzy's gaze was icy, unwavering. "Respect isn't earned by money or fear," he said slowly. "It's earned by how you treat people." The millionaire's face flushed crimson. He stammered, looking around as employees' phones recorded every moment. The tables had turned suddenly. He was the one humiliated. He opened his mouth, but no words could restore his authority. Ozzy calmly set the plate down on the edge of a side table, adjusted his sunglasses, and turned to the staff. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently. "Stand tall. Treat each other with respect. That's how you win, not by terrorizing people." A ripple of applause, quiet but heartfelt, spread through the employees. Some laughed nervously. Others wiped their eyes. Phones buzzed with notifications. Someone had already started live streaming the millionaire. Now pale and speechless, sank back into his chair. Realizing the humiliation he had never expected, Ozzy didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He simply walked away, leaving a room forever changed. A lesson had been delivered. Arrogance and cruelty crumble when confronted with courage, dignity, and a well-thrown plate. The room was still buzzing with disbelief. The arrogant millionaire, once untouchable in his own domain, sat frozen, the remnants of the plate still on the floor. His face was red, a mix of humiliation and shock. Meanwhile, OzzyOsbourneEver.com gave a slow, knowing nod to the employees before walking away, leaving the room buzzing with awe. Phones everywhere were recording. The employees, who had been terrified just minutes ago, couldn't stop whispering, "Did that really just happen?" By the next morning, clips of the confrontation were flooding social media. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Every platform had multiple angles of the plate-throwing moment. The hashtag #OzzyTakesAST and began trending worldwide. Millions of people shared and commented, praising the rock legend not only for his courage, but for doing it with class and humor. Finally, someone stood up to that guy. One comment read, "That's how you deal with a bully.com, witty and decisive." Another said, "Respect is earned, not demanded," wrote a fan from the UK. People everywhere began posting their own stories of bullies, tyrants, and arrogant leaders. Inspired by Ozzy's example, news outlets picked it up too. Morning shows replayed the video in slow motion, analyzing the millionaire's stunned reaction and the perfect timing of Ozzy's throw. Pundits and talk show hosts debated, was it audacious, or was it justice finally served? Everyone agreed on one thing. Ozzy Osbourne had just set a viral example of how courage, timing, and moral authority can completely flip a situation. Inside the company, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Employees who once dreaded every interaction with the millionaire now walked taller, their confidence restored. Some dared to speak up about long-standing grievances, citing Ozzy's actions as the inspiration. The millionaire, meanwhile, became the subject of ridicule online. Memes flooded the internet. Some showed him with a cartoon plate crashing toward his face. Others depicted him hiding under furniture as Ozzy approached. The lesson was clear. Arrogance has limits, and respect cannot be bought, it must be earned. Even celebrities and influencers joined the conversation, sharing the viral clip and tagging Ozzy, expressing admiration for his poise under pressure. The story reached people across continents, from the USA to Japan, from Brazil to the Philippines. Office workers, students, and fans everywhere began using the hashtag, turning a small confrontation into a global phenomenon. Despite the attention, Ozzy himself remained humble. In interviews he said, "It wasn't about me. It was about the people who deserve respect. Everyone has the right to be treated with dignity, no matter who they work for or who they are." The message resonated. Millions shared it, many making it a mantra in their workplaces and communities. And for the employees who had feared the millionaire for years, one lesson rang true. Courage isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it's the calm, decisive action that changes everything. By the end of the week, Ozzy's stand had inspired countless acts of courage. People standing up to bullies, speaking out against injustice, and refusing to tolerate arrogance in their lives. The millionaire's reputation was tarnished, but the employees' spirits and the world's respect for dignity and courage soared higher than ever. If you believe no one should get away with abuse or arrogance, type respect in the comments and subscribe for more jaw-dropping, inspiring stories like this.